The play that I decided to study for these weeks is Aeschylus's The Libation Bearers, which is the second of his trilogy. The actual plot of the story kind of unfolds in a few different parts. It starts with Orestes, compelled by Apollo, visiting his father's grave to um, hopefully gain his blessing in seeking revenge for the death of his father, Agamemnon, at the hands of his mother, Clytemnestra. And while he is visiting his father's tomb, he bumps unknowingly into his sister Electra, who is there for a different reason. She is there because her mother, Clytemnestra, has been essentially having nightmares, and she hopes that sending her daughter with libations to the tomb will kind of placate Agamemnon's spirit and enable her to have some modicum of peace. So they meet here, and at first they don't recognize each other, but then they discover who the other is, and this kind of sets this plot in motion where they're talking about justice. They talk about how much they love their father and how they hate their mother, and they want justice for Agamemnon's murder. And so they begin to plot their revenge, and it really circulates around this very beautiful prosaic prayer where the two of them ask for Agamemnon's spirit to aid them in their fight for justice and as they're, going to get revenge. And they sort of develop this plot where Orestes is going to sneak in under the guise of somebody else and kill Aegisthus, which is Clytemnestra's husband and the current king. And so as they develop this plot, they have this prayer which takes up a large portion of the play. It's very beautiful, very well written. And then we actually see the plot get put into action. So Orestes goes to get revenge, and as he goes to the throne room, Clytemnestra answers, which kind of throws him off. So he has to backtrack. He has to change his plans a little bit. So he essentially pretends that he's a stranger who's coming to inform Clytemnestra of Orestes' death, which understandably is very upsetting to his mother. And so she sends the nurse to go get Aegisthus to hear the horrific news. And as the nurse leaves, she's stopped by the chorus that encourage her to not bring Aegisthus's bodyguard to enable this plot. The chorus plays a very active role in this story. They are absolutely enabling the murder revenge plot. And so Aegisthus comes out and Orestes kills him. And Clytemnestra runs out to find Orestes standing over the body of her husband, whom he has just killed. And sort of in a panic, she begs for her life. And she essentially implores Orestes not to kill her because she raised him. She was there for him. She nurtured him. It doesn't work. And Orestes stabs Clytemnestra, killing her. He then takes the bodies of Clytemnestra and her husband and wraps them in the burial cloth of his father, Agamemnon, to symbolically show that it's complete, that the demands for retribution from Apollo have been met, that justice has finally been served, which is true. But then the Furies arrive on the scene and they chase Orestes. And as you can see in the photo here, not the photo, but the painting here, they're harassing him and they're enacting this violence on him, and it drives him to madness, and he runs away. He runs towards Corinth. And that's where the story ends. And the part that I really wanted to focus on in my studies further was the role of this prayer, because it was very long and it was very prosaic and very beautiful. And the thing that I found in reading different articles and going through the literature was the role that this prayer had with contemporary audiences. Because as modern day audiences, we kind of view this differently. But at the time, a lot of the people that were watching this play believed in Apollo and worshiped Apollo. So a prayer that was invoking him and a prayer that was invoking the spirits of the dead was a very real thing for audiences at the time. So while in the modern day, we might see this large stretch of just two people talking to be maybe a little boring and a little trite, it really was very impactful at the time. It was purposeful that this was a very long, drawn out sequence because the sort of ritualistic prayer that we see in the play was something that was very tied to the daily lives of its audience. And I really think that's interesting. And then when we kind of look at this through the lens of fate, which is the through line throughout this entire semester, we can see kind of the same thing we see with a lot of the Theban plays, which is essentially the fact that while Orestes had his own desires, his own wishes, and his own motivations, at the end of the day, it was Apollo that was driving his decision making. At the end of the day, it was Apollo's orders he was following. So, no matter how much we may want our free will and our agency, at the end of the day, we all fall under the will of the gods. They are ultimate and supreme. And no matter what we do, and no matter our own desires and motivations, we're nothing more than pawns of a greater power.